It's the world's second largest economy and has its sights firmly set on the top spot. In this relentless race for development, China has been pursuing raw materials all over the world, sometimes raising questions about how far it is willing to go in order to obtain them. This Chinese quest for resources and the influence it's having on the global market are documented in a new book, Winner Take All. Its author, Dambisa Moyo, joins me now from New York. Dambisa, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
What are these hot commodities and where are they?
Right. So basically, the complex of commodities includes things like arable land, water, energy, and minerals. And they really are all over the world. Having said that, if you take arable land, for example, Africa has the largest amount of untilled arable land left on the planet today. And that therefore means that the rush for resources is not only concentrated in places like Africa, but also in other regions of the world, South America, across Eastern Europe, places like Kazakhstan, Russia as well are included in that.
And how has China managed to get a head start on everybody else?
So in my book, I basically argue that there are three key pillars of the China rush for resources. The first aspect is what I call China's basically befriending the axis of the unloved. So these are regions that the Western countries have actually traditionally ignored in terms of investment destinations, places like Africa, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and so on. The second part is that they do have very deep pockets. They've got over $3 trillion of capital in foreign exchange reserves, and they are using that, some people would argue, are using that to overpay for assets, again, around the world.
Well, to go back to
then finally, one of the third part of this campaign is that China has become the marginal price setter for a number of commodities. Things like copper and coal, if you ask many traders today, they would argue that in those types of commodities, China is the marginal buyer and therefore the price setter for the resources around the world.
So is there any way to control demand and supply so that China doesn't become the only player in the game, if indeed it hasn't already?
Well, I mean, I think that the more important question is that what we're seeing from China is a clear delineation between their approach, which is very multilateral, very engaging, and I would say symbiotic in the sense that countries, both the host country and China, benefit from engagement. China provides them with investment capital, trade, and large capital flows that are used to support budget balances in these economies. And in return, these economies are happy for China to engage and to basically for them to mortgage off their assets. This is a very, very different approach from the sort of approach that we've seen from the United States and her allies, which has tended to be a much more unilateral approach and very heavily focused on a military action, such as what we've seen in Iraq recently.
And of course, the United States and Western countries focus very much on China's human rights record, but it seems that these other countries where you have this symbiotic relationship perhaps don't focus so much on that.
Well, because actually, with places like Africa, across the Middle East, 60 to 70% of these countries have populations that are under the age of 24. They need jobs, they need investment, they need to trade. And unfortunately, because Western countries have traditionally ignored these regions, these economies have been backfooted. If you look across what has happened in the Arab Spring, and if you go back to glasnost and perestroika in the 90s, the fact of the matter is these are disaffected populations, especially young populations, where people are desperately looking for investment. And China provides that. And in that sense, I think that what we've seen is quite a big miss by Western countries over the last several decades.
Dambisa Moyo, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.